Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Kirby Smart, the Georgia Bulldogs, kicking off spring practice in the month of March. Want to dive into a few storylines and questions that we're going to be following through the duration of spring practice until you talk about question marks for the Georgia Bulldogs. Question marks means a little different thing in Athens than it does some other programs across the country, right? The question marks aren't, oh, is this position going to be good enough heading into 2024? The question is, how does this Georgia team get back on top of the sport of college football, win a national championship? You make no mistake about it. That is the expectation in Athens, Georgia. And as a Michigan fan, I'll come out and say this is the best team on paper heading into 2024. Certainly my pick to win the national championship. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, just want to say, and as always, thank you to you guys. It truly has been a blast talking this program, whether we're talking high school recruiting in the transfer portal. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. We always learn a ton from you guys. Love talking ball with you guys in the comment section. Dill, going to give you the tee box before we get into some questions. This Georgia program heading into 2024, how are we feeling?
I mean, I think you said it right. I mean, this Georgia team they don't have any more room for error at any point, and that's kind of where you want to be in college football. They had a great season by almost everyone else's metrics, not by Georgia. If you don't win a national title at Georgia, the way Kirby Smart's got it rolling there, that's a failure, and that's not a bad thing. Obviously, I think almost every college football fan would kill to be in that position, but that's where you are with Georgia, and that's when you say question, you can't have any positions that aren't like quite the top level. I mean, that defensive line last you look, you want that to be elite. I don't think it necessarily played elite all year. That's kind of like what you mean by question. It was really good, but it wasn't good enough to win a national title, and that hence isn't good enough.
100%. One of the biggest questions I have, starting on the offensive side of the football, got no questions about Carson Beck. I was putting some thought into it, and I was thinking, all right, if I had to go into the 2024 season picking a college quarterback, I don't know if I'm going with another quarterback over Carson Beck. I think more the question is who replaces all the production at that pass catcher spot. Obviously, losing a generational player in Brock Bowers, losing a wide receiver that I think just showed at the combine that he was one of the best wide receivers in the country last year in Ladd McConkey. You also lose a guy in Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, who I thought played damn good for Georgia in 2023. Dill, I'm going to ask you a question. I would love to hear from the Georgia fans in the comment section. If you were to choose a leading receiver for this unit heading into 2024, what's your prediction?
I think it's going to be London Humphreys. I just think you kind of look at who's going to be the most dynamic player on the team. I think even just looking at what they did in the transfer portal at that wide receiver spot, it looks like they want to be a little more explosive. I think the way Arian Smith's kind of progressed, you just haven't had enough consistency. You know he's got the speed to do it. You know he's got the ability to do it, but just hasn't been there enough. And they obviously wanted to get guys who could get downfield and be more explosive, and I think they want this offense to go there. Colby Young, kind of a similar vein. I just think London Humphreys probably a little bit more upside. I kind of think they're going to feature him. I think they're going to feed him. And the only other guy I think can take it is one of the tight ends. And I don't know which one's going to step up and be the replacement.
That tight end room is absolutely loaded. Like, you're going to get a lot of casual college football fans thinking this tight end room is going to take a step back without Brock Bowers. And yeah, am I saying there's a Brock Bowers on this roster? No, I'm not. We haven't seen a Brock Bowers in 20 years in college football. But this tight end room, they make no mistake about it, it's still going to be one of the best units in the country. Dill, I think you hit the nail right on the head in terms of what Kirby Smart wanted to do with this roster heading into 2024, and that is attack the deeper portion of the football field. You have a guy, Carson Beck, that can attack the deeper third, right? Has the arm to make every throw you want on the football field. I think he looked at his wide receiver group and said, hey, we got a lot of guys that can create separation in those short intermediate route trees. We don't really have that guy that can really work downfield. And so what does he do? He goes out into the transfer portal and gets two wide receivers who that is how they play their game, right? Colby Young, more of that true X wide receiver, big body, extremely physical at the catch point. Colby Young's exciting because he's a guy that you saw the flashes at Miami. I don't know if you necessarily saw him fully put it together. I mean, if he fully puts it together for Georgia, I'm not going to go as far and say he's the next George Pickens, but this is a guy that can kind of play and give you that element of play style. And then London Humphreys, I think, is really just a replacement for Arian Smith, right? You haven't gotten that production from the burner and Arian Smith. London Humphreys runs a 10-7 out of high school. Dylan, that Vanderbilt offense, he averaged 20 yards per catch. This is a guy that excels working downfield, a little bit different than Colby Young, right? He's going to use his speed, not his size. I really like those two additions. I'm going to go a little bit of a different route, and I'm going to go to the guy that was second in the team in total targets, one less than Brock Bowers in 2023. I don't think a lot of people realize this. I mean, Dominic Lovett. And one, I think Dominic Lovett is going to get peppered in this Georgia offense heading into 2024. You look at how Carson Beck wants to operate. He wants to attack that short intermediate range. You look at Dominic Lovett, you go back to his time at Missouri working in the slot. This is a guy that's a separating machine, and you have a quarterback that is on time and accurate with the football. You're going to get Dominic Lovett definitely leading in receptions, but a guy that also I think has a ton of juice after the catch. I'm going Dominic Lovett for 1,000+ yards heading into 2024.
And if they can be a little more effective getting the ball down the field, that certainly helps Lovett because it opens it up. And again, a guy, when you get the ball in his hands, he's really, really electric. And you're right, he's really hard to cover one-on-one. If you can't kind of like play him in zone and play kind of shrink that field down a little bit. And if they can't, then I think you're right. Dominic Lovett has a really good chance. I think the tight ends have a really good chance to be more productive. I don't know. I just think they want to go explosive. I think they want to get the ball deep. It seems like, and to me, it's the London Humphreys show.
I want to go one more shout out before we move on, and that's Dylan Bell. Dylan Bell, I don't necessarily know how to say, like, Dylan Bell is a great wide receiver, and I'm not necessarily sure how he consistently wins, but he wins, right? Extremely crafty, can create separation, can use the frame when he needs to. I mean, Dylan Bell was a diamond in the rough for Kirby Smart out of that recruiting class. I am excited for Dylan Bell getting more opportunity in 2024. Last question mark I want to talk about on the offensive side of the football. And again, question mark, I'm using that term extremely loosely. And that's on the offensive line, right? You replace Amarius Mims, who didn't really play that much, obviously, with the injury, and then Cedric Van Pran on the inside. I think you feel good about Jared Wilson at that center spot. I'm going to throw out a little bit of an idea that, again, I would love to hear the Georgia fans in the comment section. Me being the recruiting nerd that I am, I loved Monroe Freeling coming out of high school. He checks every single box that you want in a All-American tackle, quite frankly, but you knew he wasn't going to be ready year one. You knew he had to put on that weight. You knew he had to develop that frame. He was not an Amarius Mims coming out of high school, right? There was work to be done with that body. I'm going to throw out this idea. I think you leave Ernest Green at left tackle. I think Monroe Freeling could slide into that right tackle spot, and then you kick Xavier Truss onto the inside. At the end of the day, Dill, we've done so many Power 5 programs talking about who's their starting tackle going to be. Georgia's got 3 good ones, and I think you're trying to get all 3 of those guys on the field, and if that means kicking Xavier Truss inside, I think that's what Georgia might be doing in 2024.
And I think there's a really good chance Truss plays guard at the NFL level. Again, probably not as fleet of foot as some of the, like in Ernest Green or Monroe Freeling. Good enough athlete to be really good at the college level. Yes. I think probably projects more to guard in the pros. So I think you're right. When you talk about getting your best 5 on, if you have a guy who can play that hybrid role but might be a little better at guard, in Monroe Freeling, again, if he works out the way you kind of hope he does, as you kind of stated for the reasons you did with that athleticism, I mean, it probably does make sense to play Xavier Truss in there because, I mean, you can't take out Ernest Green, and if Monroe Freeling's really good, it's really hard to take
I think Xavier Truss is better at guard anyways, quite frankly. And so, again, it's about getting your best 5 on the field, and when you have that position versatility, it's a massive asset. I like that idea. I'm going to shout out one more guy, Micah Morris. Micah Morris is another dude that is starting on pretty much every Power 5 program across the country. I don't even know if he's starting for this Georgia program, but another damn good player. I think that just speaks to Kirby Smart, just keeping guys in the program. These guys trust that if they stay in the program, it's going to pay off for them in the future. Now, moving over to the defense, still certainly no questions about the linebacker spot. But my question is what do you do with Jalen Walker? And you look at this Georgia pass rush, and that was a sore spot in this Georgia team in 2023. Those guys weren't you didn't have the game records. You didn't have the Nolan Smiths. You didn't have the Jalen Carters, the Jordan Davises, the Trevon Walkers. And what I look at is Jalen Walker is the best pass rusher on this team in 2023. You got to find a way to get him on the field more. And I know he has some strides to make in what he does in run defense. I don't waste time playing him at off-ball linebacker. You have Shmuel Mundy, you have CJ Allen, you have Raylan Wilson, you have 3 studs coming in as true freshmen at that off-ball linebacker spot. You are plenty loaded with talent and depth at that position. Take your best pass rusher, a guy that led the team in quarterback hurries, had a 21% pass rush win rate, and use him as an edge rusher, because that is what Georgia needs to do. If there's one thing that I'm saying Georgia needs to, I guess, not clean up, but take that step in heading into 2024, is the pass rush. I think Jalen Walker is the best pass rusher that you have on this roster right now.
And Kirby even kind of said that going into the year. So it wasn't like come as a surprise that he was even saying, well, are we going to be dominant like we should be? And they were a fine unit. It's not like obviously it was bad or anything, but it wasn't like those 2021 Georgia defensive line or even that 22 line. Those were so good. And you're right. They just didn't have that guy who was striking fear. And they also didn't dominate as a team. That's kind of why I think you're looking can they platoon a little better? Can they rush as a team a little better? And I think you're right. At the end of the day, Jalen Walker, he feels like to me the best guy on this team in terms of rushing. I think he can rush from the inside and the outside, which I think has been an asset for Georgia defensive linemen in the past, thinking of guys like Trayvon Walker. I mean, I think he's got to be there. And I'm also looking for Damon Wilson to play a little more. He feels like the one guy with just that hyper twitchiness, that athleticism that really constrained defensive line or offensive tackles, especially. If he just kind of bulks his size up and takes it up to kind of look like a college defensive end, I think he can be really good too.
And I think that's the thing with both Jalen Walker and Damon Wilson. I think you're two, from an athletic standpoint. And Mikael Williams, I really hope we see that step that we expected to see going into year 2. I hope we see that in year 3. And I know this sounds crazy. I think Wilson and Jalen Walker are probably your 2 most gifted edge rushers in terms of the twitch they have and the burst and the bend that they possess. Now, on the inside, again, Nazir Stackhouse, solid. Warren Brinson, solid. Guys that, again, are starting at almost every single Power 5 program across the country. You get those guys back. That certainly elevates the floor of this defensive line group, right? It certainly helps the depth. You got to be looking at some of the young guys to take that step, because you talk about potential game records. One, Christian Miller looked phenomenal towards the end of the year against Alabama in the SEC championship game. Dill, I shouted him out as one of my breakout candidates. I throw in Jordan Hall. I throw in Jamal Jarrett. Not throwing Xavier McLeod coming from South Carolina. All of those guys going into only year 2 of their college football career. That's normally when you expect that step. My question for spring practice is, out of Jordan Hall, Jamal Jarrett, Xavier McLeod, who's emerging to be that game wrecker for this Georgia defense on the inside of that defensive line?
Yeah, and I essentially think you want to see that the snap count inverted a little bit, if you will, from the Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson.
Yeah, I think
you want those 2 on the field more. I just think, or those 3, maybe you should say, they were just they have a much higher ceiling, and that's what you need. You need more playmaking. You need more pressure, just being disruptive. And again, that's what Christian Miller really showed. Jordan Hall, again, much younger player, obviously, but you saw some flashes of just pure strength, a little bit more athleticism. I think those 2 need to be the guys leading the way. I think you want to see them take more snaps, and using Brinson and Stackhouse is kind of what you've seen from Georgia in the past, is more depth guys being able to they're not going to be liabilities, but they're just not the game wreckers.
I think you will see that. I mean, these guys were true freshmen. And I think it's really easy when you have guys like Jalen Carter come in as a true freshman and just dominate right away. You start to think that's the norm. It is far from the norm, right? Especially on the inside of that defensive line when you need that grown man strength, that grown man body. I think for Georgia, and this again, by no means am I taking a shot at Nazir Stackhouse or Warren Brinson. The best version of this Georgia defense is if Jordan Hall, Jamal Jarrett, Christian Miller are your starting inside guys, because that means they took the step. And again, if you're beating out Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson, you know you're a damn good football player heading into 2024. Last thing I want to talk about, again, 0 questions at the linebacker spot, right? Whether it's Raylan Wilson stepping up, whether it's true freshman Justin Williams, they're going to be good at linebacker. It's the best unit in the country. Back in the back end, Dill, I'm looking at replacing a couple guys, right? Kamari Lassiter, one of the best cornerbacks in the country last year. I think you feel pretty good at the boundary cornerback spot with guys like Julian Humphrey and Dalen Everett. What I'm looking at is that star position. I mean, Tyke Smith was so good for Georgia in 2023, and I think he got the perfect kind of heir apparent for Tyke Smith and Jonel Aguero. You asked me to create a star for the Georgia Bulldogs in a laboratory. It's Jonel Aguero. And a guy that, again, just couldn't really find a field because he was playing behind an All-American and Tyke Smith. I think you see him take that step, a guy that can get his nose in the run game, come off the edge and blitz, athletic enough to hold up in coverage. I cannot wait to see Jonel Aguero in that star position for the Bulldogs heading into 2024 here.
Yeah, that's what you see from the Bulldogs. I mean, again, we haven't seen Aguero play yet, really. But again, you saw some moments in the spring game that you really liked, has the athleticism, you know that. So again, it's just about him stepping up because you're kind of right. You look at everything else, it looks really solid. I mean, Dan Jackson, going to be ultra solid. I think he pairs pretty well with Malachi Starks, who is a star in my mind, as good of a safety as you'll see in college football.
If you were to ask me, sorry to cut you, if you were to ask me who gets a 99 overall in the EA Sports game, Malachi Starks is one of the guys that you're looking at for that 99 deal. I'll throw another guy in, KJ Bolden, coming in as a true freshman. Again, Dan Jackson gives you that high floor. You know you're getting solid play. If you start getting some buzz that KJ Bolden or a guy like Jake Pope making some strides, like that, Malachi Starks, KJ Bolden in the back end of that Georgia defense, you're looking at a lot of turnovers, a lot of plays from those safeties. It's a loaded team. And again, a few questions that you're monitoring. This is a team that, again, my pick to win a national championship, and a team that from top to bottom, talented, deep, coached by Kirby Smart, damn good recipe to have a pretty quality season in 2024. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.